Hi, I'm Sarah Sati from Mindful Island, and today I want to talk to you about a topic that is really important in the modern world, and that is the topic of being an empath. So, check in with yourself right now. If you've never heard the term before, I'll give you a brief definition. This is essentially somebody who is very vulnerable to experiencing the suffering of someone else. So, I'm not sure that that's the exact definition you would find if you Googled it, but that's the commonplace definition in the world. It's the idea that your pain I feel very intensely. A lot of times when we talk about the empath, we talk about how we need to protect ourselves if we are an empath. I am absorbing other people's pain and other people's suffering, other people's energy. So a long time ago, I heard about the concept of empath, and I actually remember at a point in time, I thought I was one as well. And it's true, I do feel very deeply other people's experiences. But I also had a lot of experience in my life with narcissism. And at some point in time, I started hearing the story of the empath and knowing the story of the narcissist, and the two stories began to sound very, very similar to me. So I didn't understand why. I thought, well, this doesn't make sense, right? The empath would identify themselves as being a very sensitive person who cares very much about people, whereas the narcissist would be identified, maybe not personally, but by people close to them, as someone who doesn't really care very much for people, who doesn't really feel other people's pain. So why were these two things coming back together over and over again for me? And it was because, and I found out later after reading actually a book by Robert Sapolsky, who is a primatologist from Stanford, and he wrote the book Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, and he also wrote the book Behave, which is his most recent book. I'm pretty sure that it's his most recent book. Anyway, Robert Sapolsky discusses it in this book, and he talks about the reason that an empath and a narcissist, and he doesn't make this connection, I'm making it right now, sound so familiar to me is because somebody who feels a lot of empathy, meaning that somebody who is in an environment with another person who's suffering and really feels that very strongly, acts very similar to how a narcissist would act in a situation like that. The number one goal of the human being is to protect themselves from pain. And so if I am in an excessive amount of pain, and I'm in an environment, the first thing that I'm going to do is remove myself from the environment and protect myself, which means the last thing I'm going to do is act in a pro-social way. And this is what Robert Sapolsky hits on, that someone very high in empathy is the least likely to act pro-socially. So why does this matter? Well, acting in a pro-social way is acting for the good of humanity. It's helping someone who's in an experience of suffering deal with the suffering that they're dealing with, or holding space for that person. But what happens is an empath feels it so strongly, they actually become afraid of how they're feeling, and they protect themselves and they don't do anything to help. Now, here's where the differentiation between a narcissist and an empath is more clear. Because in these two situations, you see the same thing. Your pain, I don't care about it. It's mine. It's all about me. I don't want to deal with it right now. I need to protect myself first. That story could both be told by somebody who identifies as an empath as well as somebody who identifies as a narcissist. But the story that comes later will only be a story we hear from an empath, which is, so Sarah, and I hear this all the time, so Sarah, what do I do if I am experiencing so intensely the pain of someone else and I want to help, but I just can't? That is a statement you're only going to hear from a true empath. And that is actually the bulk of what I want to address today is, what do you do if you are an empath and you don't want to be feeling that suffering so deeply and then needing to leave the situation? You actually want to be a helper. So what I believe strongly is that empaths actually are people who come to this planet with gifts to give. If you're somebody who feels very strongly the emotions of another, that means you're very connected to the energetic flow between individuals and groups, and also the energetic experience happening inside your own body. That's a special quality to have. And it is those people exactly that we need in the world more than ever to be the people that are caring for the suffering of all of the other people in the world. So an empath has a gift to give. But if they're stuck in this place of looking like a narcissist, feeling as though, this pain is too much, I have to get away right away, if they're stuck in that place, they can't give the gifts that they have to give. And so that's when they need to start learning how to manage the high levels of empathy that they're experiencing, so that instead of running away, they can stay put and be present for the pain of other people and groups of people in a way that becomes pro-social, that becomes helpful and benefits humanity. So how does someone do something like that? Well, this video that I'm making now is actually a tag on to a video that I recorded live from an event on Insight Timer at the end of February, where I discussed the topic of transforming suffering. And so you can check that out on my YouTube channel if you want. It's up there. It's also the audio only up on Insight Timer, broken into two parts, the discussion and then the practices. So if that's of interest to you, but it's not necessary to go forward here, because quite likely, especially if you've meditated before, you've dealt with some sort of compassion meditations. So the thing about compassion meditations, which is something that's a good quality for an empath to work with, is that compassion meditations often have us envisioning the suffering of other people and taking it into ourselves. So in this Transform Suffering video that I have on YouTube, I talk about this practice, or I guide people through this practice where I have them imagine they have thousands of arms. This is like Avalokiteshvara, this Buddha who had 1,000 arms and could absorb the suffering of others and could extend compassion across the globe. So I had people imagine they had thousands of arms and that they were reaching out and touching people who were in a suffering state, and that they were absorbing that suffering. So after the event, what happened was I had a live group with me. The event was over on Insight Timer, but the live group was still there, and we dissected the experience. And one person said, that was really difficult for me. As I envisioned myself absorbing the pain, I got very scared. I don't want this pain. I don't want this suffering. And this is an experience that was shared by someone else that was there live as well. And in my mind, I thought, oh no, I cut this event off too soon, because I bet many, many people were experiencing that. When you're doing compassion work and you imagine yourself absorbing the suffering of others, if you are a high empath, that is a very dangerous place to be, because the last thing you want to do is feel more pain from other people. So what do you do with that pain? Whether you're a high empath or you're not a high empath, you're just a regular person who feels regular amounts of other people's suffering. Either way, it doesn't matter. You do the same thing with the pain and the suffering that you absorb. So in this Transform Suffering talk that I gave, I talked about identifying with emptiness inside of you. And if you want to do that with me right now, we can just do a very short practice where you sit up straight wherever you are. And you can let your eyes close just for a moment. And imagine that you drop out of the thinking mind, you drop down into your body. Just feel your body here for a moment. Not thinking about your body, not conceptualizing your body, just feeling the feelings that are in your body right now, whatever those feelings are. And now, here in this place that you are, I want you to find you. Where are you inside of your body? Are you in your heart? Are you in your eyes? Just ask yourself the question. Look inside and scan your entire form and ask yourself, where am I? Are you in your brain? Can you find yourself in your right big toe? Is there anywhere that you can find you? And if yes, extract you from this body. And just let whatever experience is arising to arise. Don't try to contrive. Don't try to force anything. If no answers come when you say, "Where am I?" when you look for you, just be with that feeling of no answer. And then take a deep breath in through your nose. Open your mouth. Let it out. Let your eyes blink open. I know what happened for you, and that doesn't mean I know exactly what your subjective experience was, but I know that you can't find a you. There is no you. There is only emptiness. And as you dig deeper and deeper into the search for yourself, you come up empty-handed again and again. And this is a beautiful thing. You are as empty as a sesame seed or a blade of grass. And if you listen to this Transform Suffering talk, you'll see me talk about this again. You'll hear me talk about this again. There is nothing to be found. There's no innate thing that you can extract from something that is it. It's just a concept of a sesame seed, a concept of a blade of grass, a concept of a Sarah. And so if that's the case, and all I truly am is emptiness, why is that such a great thing? Well, I'll tell you, because emptiness has some beautiful qualities. Some qualities that when we stop identifying ourselves with this small Sarah who talks about spirituality and mindfulness and these things, this Sarah who is so old, who lives in such and such a place, who has so many kids, when we stop identifying ourselves with this small self and we start identifying ourselves with what we really are, which is emptiness, the qualities that we embody become beautiful. You know, Sarah has boundaries. I have limits. Space, emptiness, there are no boundaries. There are no limits. There are no have-tos or should-haves. And in that way, emptiness and space are totally accommodating. Everything can come in. Everything can be there. And it's completely endless. And that is what makes emptiness such a beautiful quality to identify with. Whether you believe it now or not, you can just begin to shift your attention every time you feel identified with this small self who has limits and boundaries. Remind yourself to look inward and find you who has limits and boundaries, you who someone can take things from, you who can have too much of something. You won't find you. You'll look and you'll never find you. But you will find emptiness again and again, which means you'll find spaciousness. You'll find acceptance and openness and love. And this, my friends, is where we put the suffering. So that if you are a high empath, or if you are just a regular human being experiencing empathy on a regular amount or level, all you do is absorb that suffering and imagine you deposit it into what you really are, which is emptiness. And there's limitless space here. It's not like the dump in your town where you take loads and loads and eventually you have to cover it over by a hill with grass on it and pretend it wasn't there because it's full. No, emptiness is totally empty. You can fill it and fill it and fill it and fill it, and it will never ever be full. So there's no fear there. There's no fear of absorbing the suffering of others because you know that you can put it somewhere where it doesn't stay in you. It just enters back into the void. And this is a beautiful thing. And it takes training. You don't just become good at something right away like this, especially if you're a high empath. You have to practice it again and again and again and again. And the best place to practice it is not in the moment with someone extremely high level suffering. No, you want to practice it in day-to-day life. So you have a meditation practice or some other type of practice where you imagine yourself taking in at first just small amounts of suffering and depositing them into an empty void. taking them from other people who don't realize yet that they're emptiness. You see, if you're watching this video, it means you're already getting it. You're already there. So for all the other people who aren't there yet, you can invite their suffering into you, and you can just toss it in that endless open void where all things are acceptable and all things are okay and all things are met with love. And so you have to start now. If you experience high levels of empathy, you have gifts to share with the world. Definitely, without a doubt. But first you need to learn how to hold the space for other people so that it is okay to be around suffering. It is okay. People suffer, and it doesn't mean it's all yours if you hold space for it, because, and this is the beautiful thing, there is no you. So you can take that suffering in and you can deposit it into the void. Imagine if you're doing this practice, and I won't do it with you now because the video will get too long, but maybe I'll put one on later. And you can also find this video on Transform Suffering, this practice where you envision yourself reaching out and touching someone. Maybe first just someone you love, but over time, someone you hate. Over time, people you don't know, whole communities of people. And you imagine putting your hand on them and breathing in their suffering. And you imagine that suffering disappearing into emptiness. It doesn't stay in you. It doesn't stay in them. It goes right back where it came from, to nothingness. And you practice again and again and again. And maybe it hurts and tears come, and that's totally normal. That's totally normal. That's part of the process. So you allow that to happen. And you just do the work that needs to be done so that you can share your gifts with humanity, because we need more people who feel. We need more people who are connected on an energetic level. We need more of them in the world. And there's an argument that everybody is that way, but many people are turned off to it. They're not even open to watching a video like this. And so for those people, we need you. We need you. I need you. So please do the work that must be done. Practice absorbing the suffering and reminding yourself that all you are is empty anyways, and deposit that suffering again and again back where it belongs, to the root of where it came, emptiness. I hope this finds you well, safe, happy, and that you find some use here with the tools that I've offered you. Until next time, live mindfully, be well.